There are no planned fire alarms tests today, and if you hear the fire alarms, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is the St John's Churchyard off Jewett Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you as required. The public toilets are located off the main reception area. There is a refreshment machine for use by members of the public in the waiting area outside this meeting room. And finally, please switch your mobile phone to silence whilst in the meeting room. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channels. Members of the public are welcome to film, audio record, photograph or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. I'd ask you please be considerate towards other people in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. If you're filming the meeting, please do not film the audience. The code for accessing the Council's Wi-Fi, it's FR33 Wi-Fi followed by an exclamation mark. During the meeting, members of the committee will not access the internet except as it relates to the official business of the meeting, send or receive emails, text messages or tweet concerning the business of the committee meeting. I will now formally start the meeting. Item 1 is apologies. I have at the moment 2 apologies, Councillor Kath Whittam and Councillor Dan Whitehead. I move on to item 2, confirmation of voting members. With vote members of the committee, please indicate by raising your hands. Thank you. Item 3, notification of any item of business which the chair deems urgent, and I trust members you have on your desk the members pack and also the addendum report. You will just confirm you've received those documents? Great, thank you very much. Item 4, disclosure of interest and dispensation. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be discussed and considered at this meeting? Very good, thank you very much. I'll now move on to item 5, development management. The next item of business concerns the determination of planning applications. I would like to remind everyone of the committee's guidance and conduct of business. Officers will present the report, outline their recommendations, answer questions raised by the committee. If present wishing to speak, the following may then address the committee for no more than 3 minutes each. A spokesperson representing any objector to the application, and by now, ideally, if there is an objector in the room, you'd need to be in the front area so we can allocate the time according to you. You'll be given no more than 3 minutes to speak. You'll then be followed by the applicant or their agents, therefore by a spokesperson representing any supporter of the application who lives within 100 metres of the development site, and last but not least, a ward councillor representing the area affected by the proposal. Ward members in attendance and those nominated to speak on behalf of objectors, supporters and applicants should ideally sit in the front gallery. This is for easy communication between the committee and, of course, the speakers, in case any issue need to be clarified later in the proceeding. And, of course, it would not be an opportunity to take part in the debate of the committee. Each speaker ideally should restrict their comment to the planning aspects of the proposal, should avoid repeating information which is already in the report. The meeting, of course, is not a hearing where participants present evidence to be cross-examined by other participants. At the end of each representation, the committee may ask questions of the presenter. Speakers ideally should lead committee on subject which should ideally welcome further questioning. After receiving all submission, the committee will debate the application and consider the recommendation. This is a council committee meeting which is open to the public, and of course, ideally, he says, there will be no interruption from members of the audience. Finally, I would like everyone present to know that although the committee comprises members of different political parties, we are not politically whipped. Our decisions are made in accordance with the Council's planning policy and based upon the information contained in the relative report, together with the consultation responses and any verbal submissions made today. How we approach these applications is set out in the Development Management Report in item 5. If members are happy to note the report, we move on to considering the planning applications. Are you content? I will proceed in that case. In that case, we will proceed to item 7.1. And this, of course, is reference 19 AP 1974 Bradford Boys Club, or indeed Club, 5 to 13 Commercial Way, that's London, SE 1560Q. And of course, members, these are pages 5 to 94 of the main agenda pack, and of course, 1 to 6 of the addendum report. report. And I can invite the officer present the report, please, to introduce yourself, and you may present your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Tom Weaver of the Strategics Applications team. And just before I run through the presentation, just to bring to your attention a couple of things in the addendum, which is primarily around clarifications and corrections on the proposed conditions. The ones that, the main ones to note, to bring to your attention, I would say, are aligning the use of the on-site loading bay and changing the hours of use around that, and also the hours of use of the club itself to align with what they currently have licensing permissions for, with the various activities that they provide on the site. So the proposal is for the redevelopment of the Bradford Youth Club, and I'll run through the details of the proposal as I go through the presentation. But just to start off with the site, there's bounded by Commercial Way to the south, which you can see on the screen there, Chandler Way to the west, Pentridge Street and the development site currently under construction to the immediate east, and the development site is the yellow space there to the left, to the right of the site in blue there. And then to the north there's the Anne Burden Nursery, which adjoins the site immediately to the north. So the site currently hosts a low-rise and relatively dilapidated youth club building with a gated parking area and service yard to the Commercial Way frontage to the south. The site was previously part of a wider site allocation in the Peckham and Nunhead Area Action Plan, along with additional sites located to the east, which are now largely built out, all subject to planning approval and under construction. The surrounding area is predominantly residential, with a mix of houses and 3 to 4/5-storey blocks of flats. There are no heritage assets in the immediate vicinity of the site, though there is St Luke's Church, which is Grade 2 listed, and that's the yellow square to the north there, approximately 115 metres to the north of the site, and there's also the Scow Gardens Conservation Area to the southwest of the site. So the proposal in its headlines is for the redevelopment of the existing youth club to provide a new and enhanced youth club facility, which is Youth Class F2, at ground and first floor levels, with 48 residential units across ground to 8th floor levels, so that's a total of 9 stories. With the building massing concentrated in the southwestern corner of the site towards Southampton Way, with lower elements at 5/6 stories, with a 6-storey setback to the north and east, and then a 3-storey element in the northeastern corner. So the youth club itself, the enhanced facility would be slightly larger, and you can see the ground floor plan here of the proposed youth club space. It would be slightly larger, more efficient to operate and supervise, incur lower maintenance and running costs, and provide a better range of spaces for the services and activities the club offers than the existing building on the site. The proposal would provide 17 additional residential units as affordable housing, with 12 of these for social rent and 5 for intermediate shared ownership. And this equates to 32% and 10% by habitable room, respectively. So that's a total affordable housing offer of 42%, which is higher than the minimum 35% on-site policy requirement. The proposal was subject to 2 rounds of consultation, with responses both in support for the provision of the new youth club facility particularly, as well as the high level of affordable housing, and objecting primarily along the lines of scale, height and massing, amenity and construction impacts. So the proposal would largely have an excellent quality of accommodation, with minimum space standards exceeded and a mix of wheelchair units across the affordable and private housing elements. 25% of the units would be provided as family-sized, which is compliant with policy. There'll be a high proportion of dual-aspect units at 65% of the total, and it would all be tenure blind. The communal amenity and child play space, which you can see on the screen here, although it's a little bit washed out, apologies, would be provided on the 6th floor roof level, and it would be accessible to all residential occupiers within the development, including the affordable aspect and the private aspect, and the size of the proposed child play space would be able to accommodate areas for all age groups in accordance with the GLA's methodology on calculating the requirements for that. The proposal's massing and buff brick-led architecture would positively respond to the existing and emerging townscape, including to the Part 5 and Part 9-storey council homes development located to the immediate east of the site, which you can see from a streetscape render view here. There would not be any harm to heritage assets located within the vicinity of the site as a result of the proposed development. The development would provide a positive contribution to the streetscape in providing active street frontages in place of what is currently the blank building frontage and the security fencing of the existing site, of the existing building. The development would provide housing alongside the youth club on site, and this would ensure an efficient use of land on what is otherwise and currently an underutilised site in an urban location, and it would acceptably increase the density of the site and contribute to housing provision in the borough. The proposal would have acceptable amenity impacts on neighbouring occupiers, including in terms of daylight and sunlight, taking into account the existing low-rise nature of the site and the urban location. Consultation responses did raise concerns from staff at the adjoining Anne Bernard Nursery in particular, primarily on the impact on access to daylight and sunlight for that neighbouring building, and the overshadowing of the playground, which you can see here as a view from the site, and overlooking issues in the context of child safeguarding. Just on the overshadowing, the 91% of the adjoining playground area would receive at least 2 hours of sunlight on March 31st against the BRE recommendation of 50%. The applicant additionally tested the area of the playground which would be subject to 4 hours of direct sunlight, so that's double the BRE recommended 2 hours, which confirms 67% of the playground area would still receive this amount of sunlight. So that's the picture you can see on the screen on the right there. And the 91% area still receiving the 2 hours BRE recommended is on the left. So that's on March 31st. So what the BRE recommends is tested in terms of the time of year. So on balance, the overshadowing impacts for the playground are considered to be acceptable. The applicant did also revise the massing and the treatment of the north elevation during the application determination period to reduce overlooking impacts and the sense of enclosure by reducing the number of windows and balconies and utilising obscure glazing to the windows, fronting that northern boundary and shifting the massing back from the northern boundary at 5th floor level. So you can see the top elevation and the top plan at 5th floor, that's as the scheme came in 2019, and the revised scheme, which is before you for consideration now, is the bottom elevation and the bottom floor plan there of the 5th floor. Some incidental overlooking would remain, but this is not considered to be unacceptable in the context of an urban location, given the size of the nursery playground at approximately 0.14 hectares, and the focus of the higher elements of the proposal away from that northern boundary to the south. The proposal would provide a policy-compliant level of cycle parking for the residential and non-residential users on the site, and the proposal would accommodate an on-site servicing bay for the youth club in the northwestern corner, accessed from Chandler Way, while the residential aspects would be car-free. 2 blue badge parking spaces would be provided on street to be secured in consultation with the council's highways team. The proposal would meet minimum on-site carbon emissions savings requirements of 40% set out in the new Southwark Plan, the Southwark Plan 2022, with the potential for this to be increased to be secured by the Section 106 agreement. The youth club element, meanwhile, would achieve a BREEAM level of excellent, which is a positive aspect of the scheme. So in summary, the proposal is strongly supported for the provision of the re-provided and enhanced youth club and the provision of new high-quality housing, including a high proportion of affordable housing in a mixed-use development in an urban location. Amenity, transport and design and heritage issues and impacts are considered to be acceptable and will be addressed by the relevant conditions, in addition to the Section 106 obligations and contributions set out in the recommendation for approval in the officer report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Councillor Livingstone, Councillor Colwell follows.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Yes, I wanted to refer you to slide 23 and paragraph 166 of the report regarding the impact of the development on the Anne Bernard nursery playground. And obviously the report sets out that for 2/3 of the playground they receive at least 2 hours sunlight on the 21st of March. Could you let us know, because obviously a playground has a specific use at specific times of the day, could you let us know have you got a clearer idea about what the impact is at the times when the playground might be used by the children at the nursery? Because obviously if it's 2 hours and those 2 hours were 6 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the evening, it might not be of much use to the children in the playground, those 2 hours. So if you could give us more of an idea about what the hours would be in terms of the daylight impact on the playground.
Yes, thank you. I might not be able to give you as a comprehensive answer as you might like. What this image on the right shows, and there's a table in the bottom left corner of that right-hand picture, is, I believe this came through from the applicant yesterday, so apologies, it's short notice, and potentially...
Sorry, apologies, I think the table just tells us technically what that diagram shows us, doesn't it? So in terms of the two-thirds is identified as getting more than 2 hours on the table. So the table is here in terms of saying pretty much the same diagram.
Well, my understanding is what that table is showing in the corner is that it's setting out what proportion is receiving the 4 hours of sunlight from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I believe it's over a 12-hour period. And if the applicant has their daylight and sunlight consultant on hand, which they do, I believe they'll be able to provide a more detailed answer as opposed along the lines of the specific times of day which the area will receive that two-thirds over the 4 hours.
Thank you, Councillor Livingstone. I'm sure we'll tackle that later on. Councillor Codwell.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Tom, for the presentation. A couple of questions just around the consultation. One, there's a reference which suggests the supporters of the application are all in one way or another associated with the club. Some people use it, some people work there. I just wondered if you could give a little bit more, if it's possible, to give a bit more colour as to whether most of those people are also living in the local area, and whether we should, whether we should give, equal consideration to the people who've spoken in support, even if they live nowhere near the area. And then the second question on the consultation, it's noted one of the issues raised in the first round of consultation was around safeguarding, and then the report details the changes the applicants made. Can you give us some assurance that the objectors were satisfied on those safeguarding grounds, that the changes are appropriate?
Thank you. On the split of the supporters as to whether they were from the borough or not, I don't have that to hand in front of me at the moment, so I'm not able to give you that specific breakdown. On the, I don't know if Yvonne has any comment to make on that. On the safeguarding, it's my understanding that the objectors were somewhat satisfied, but they did raise the same issues during that second round of consultation, understandably, because there is still going to be some incidental aspects of overlooking as a result of the development. But there were, I believe it was 26 objections in the first round, the majority, or approximately half of which came through from representatives or people associated with the Anne Bernard Nursery to the north. And the second round of consultation, we received 4 objections as a result of, from people who were directly associated with the nursery. So there is still, I guess they weren't entirely satisfied, but to a large degree it's considered that they were, given that the applicant has made the changes that they did.
Just maybe a small supplemental point. I haven't got the exact figures in front of me, but when I reviewed the consultation responses in response to your first question, the majority of those who were users of the club were local, not surprisingly, but there were a number of responses which came through from people who were associated with the club. So some of those were, for instance, trustees or people who were making a more broad point about the value of social infrastructure, particularly aimed towards children and teenagers. But the users were, as you would expect, to be local.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed for responding to committee questions. I'll now move on. I'm told that there are no objectors in the room. Let's make sure that is the case. In that case, and that's very good. I'll move on then, in that case, then to the applicant agent. I see a number of names: Sam Farah, Daniel Campbell, Josh Kramer. Who's coming forward? Okay. If I can first of all just ask you just to introduce yourself for the committee. There should be a button on the speaker there. There you go.
It's been a while since I've been presenting at a planning committee. I'm Simon Fowler. I'm a planning consultant, acting on behalf of Guildmore and the club. And Daniel is manager of the club, and what we'll do is Daniel will give you an overview of what the club does and how it operates and its importance in the community. I'll give you a short overview of the planning process. And we've also got a couple of colleagues on hand if you've got any particular questions you want to answer. I'm thinking more about the sunlight.
Thank you. So, in fact, so this is what we will do. We'll give you 3 minutes. At 30 seconds, I'll indicate there's 30 seconds remaining. Can I to be clear then, are you wanting the time to be split between you both equally, or just from... You've broken, have you?
Yeah, I think Dan will probably speak for a little bit longer than I will, and I'll sort of sweep up at the end. So.
I'll indicate accordingly. So in that case, you may begin your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. My name is Daniel Campbell. I've been working at the club for over 10 years, but I've been managing for like the last 6. The club works with predominantly young people, 4 to 18, and we don't shut our doors to the 18 pluses. They can come back, get careers advice, get help with CVs, workshops and stuff like that. But the most thing that they come back for is just one-on-one mentoring, mainly. We also have an all-female fitness group, what we started about 3 years ago. We started it with 3 women. They're about nearly 70 on the books now. And funny enough, at their morning session today, we invited Millwall Football Club in to speak with them afterwards, and the women persuaded them to give us free football sessions and free football kits for all of the children as well, for the 4 to 10s group particularly. So when a young person comes to the club, they can play football, they can play basketball, they can use our recording studio. We've actually had 2 young people sign record deals from using the humble little studio we have as well. Or they can just come and have a safe space to chill out with their friends. We also do day trips and residential trips. In 2019, before the pandemic, we took a group of kids to do Outward Bounds in the Lake District, and we'll be taking a group of 12 in August this year as well. The staff, the kids, all from Peckham. It's really a close-knit community. I have a saying there, one hand washes the other, both hands wash the face, because everyone gets involved in everything and we just get the job done. We have nearly 400 kids on our book, and as I said, we have over nearly 70 women for the fitness group. And would you believe we do all of that in a building that's over 100 years old, nearly falling apart? And that's why we need a new building. We need a new building so we're not spending tons of money on maintenance and repair costs, and we can just give it to the young people in the community of Peckham. Thank you guys so much for listening.
So you said 1 minute, so just give you a very sort of quick overview. So we came in and met with officers back in 2017, 2018, submitted an application early 2019, and it was a little bit taller, denser, had less affordable, and with the input for officers, sort of Tom's been very good in the process. We've hopefully got a scheme which sort of ticks all the boxes on terms of re-providing the youth club, providing a good provision of affordable, which is in excess of the policy requirements, and actually it's got a lot of family social rent units, so we think that's a good positive associated with it, and hopefully with a positive recommendation tonight we can move forward and get the youth club that the people of Peckham need. Thanks very much.
40 seconds remaining, but that's fine. Questions from the committee? Councillor Vine, yep, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Sounds like a fantastic facility. I just wanted to ask you about the hours of operation. So you're talking about 4 to 18-year-old users of the facility, but I noticed that the club's open till midnight on a Saturday. Is that for use of the service users, or is there another?
Yeah, I mean, part of the business model going forward is that space will become hireable by the public. It's one of an income streams which the club operates. Is hireable at that time now, I think, isn't it? I think it's later than that at the moment. So I think the current licence allows the facility to stay open till 1 o'clock and people can hire it. So we're maybe closing a little bit earlier than we would do currently. And yeah, that's just one of the things that the club will do going forward.
Just quick supplemental. So the service users during the week would normally you're open till 9 o'clock normally, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Livingstone? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, now I wanted to return to my question about the impact of daylight and sunlight on the nursery playground, and whether you could give any specific details. I guess hopefully this isn't too technical, but for me I'd like to sort of understand about midday in terms of this testing, what proportion of the playground would be able to receive sunlight.
Over my right shoulder is Mark Kidd, who's our daylight sunlight consultant, so perhaps he can give you a bit more of a...
Yep,
bit
if
more
you
of
would
an
come forward.
explanation.
Again, could I just ask you just to introduce yourself again, please?
Sure. Just push that one.
You want ready?
Okay. Hello there, my name is Mark Kidd and I'm a Daylight and Sunlight Principal at Avers & Young, and I've been practicing for almost 18 years now, working on various schemes across London. So yeah, delighted to be working on this proposed youth club and residential accommodation. So thanks very much for the question. Yes, we have run the BRE test that you can see on screen there. The test on the left is the sun, hours and ground test, which is I'll try not to be too technical here. That is the BRE test, which takes the 21st of March as the test date, because that is the mean height of the sun across the year. And that is a reasonable point to look at the average across the year as to what the impact would be. The test simply says this, that there should be a minimum of 2 hours sun to at least 50% of the area across that time on the 21st of March. And the test is taken from 7 a.m. through till 5 p.m. Okay? So they are the hours that are considered. Now, the BRE says that if there is a loss of that particular sun hours on ground area of 2 hours of more than 20% compared to the existing condition, then that loss will be noticeable and significant. Okay? Now, in this case, we have a loss of 9%. Okay? That is what the analysis has told us. So therefore, in accordance with the BRE guidelines, that would indicate that the impact upon the 2 hours sun is insignificant and will not be noticeable to the users of the playground. We've also gone one step further, which is the image on the right. Now, this was requested by officers to demonstrate that we have gone the extra step to look at what is happening to that particular area. Now, this is still the sun, hours and ground test on the right, but it's gone into a more granular detail, and that table, which I can't read and you probably can't read either, on the bottom left, simply times not just the 2 hours, but it's from 0 minutes through to, in this case, we doubled the recommendation through to 240 minutes, which of course is 4 hours. We could have kept going, but the table wouldn't have fitted, quite frankly, and I think a doubling of the BRE guidelines is tremendous in any event. So what that shows is the yellow area, that is the area that is getting 240 minutes. Okay, and you can see that that's the 67% of the area, or just over 2/3 of the area of the playground. And then the sort of reddish shaded areas, can you see that as you come closer to the club? Naturally, there's going to be more shadow when you're closer to the boundary. It's as simple as that, particularly when you're comparing to a low-rise site. You introduce a bigger building, of course there's going to be shadow, even if that's just an additional floor more than the existing. But what the red colour is showing is it sort of grades into there from an amber to red, is that that area is still achieving 2 hours. When it starts to move into the blue type purple area that you can see closer to the club boundary, that is where that area is achieving still a minimum of 40 minutes, okay? So overall, we've still got a tremendous situation with the analysis on the right. So the minimum would be 40 minutes to a very small area, okay? And we are fully BRE compliant. Now, in terms of the times that this takes place, as I say, the test is run from 7 a.m. in the morning through till 5 p.m. So as the sun tracks around from the east, that image there, you're looking down with north to the north of that image. There will be more sun, of course, in the mornings, tracked across as it tracks across to the south. So a lot of that 2 hours will be picked up to the east of the playground in the mornings, if that makes sense. Now, can you see to the right of the screen, there is there's a clip of a development which has just been mentioned. That's the new development that is currently going up, actually, which is not dissimilar in height to us. We've taken a worst case scenario, and you can see that we included that in the baseline as it would be built. So we haven't cheated, as it were, and not put it in there. We assumed when we did this analysis last year, when that scheme wasn't up, that worst case scenario, let's put it in. So as the sun tracks round, naturally, when you're completely to the south, which is sort of late morning at that point, moving into midday, there will be a clipping, of course, of sun into the playground in March, and also, of course, in winter when the sun is lower in the sky. But the BRA guidelines does say that there will be an impact, even to small buildings that are proposed in the winter. So you're going to get some additional shadow in the central area of the playground, closer towards where the proposed development is, around about midday. But then past midday, the sun tracks round past the development at a southwest angle, and then the western area of the playground, that would be then getting its 2 hours or 4 hours, as it were, from that direction, if that makes sense. So yes, there's going to be an impact. There will always be an impact upon shadow when you introduce new buildings, particularly to a low-rise site, and that is why the BRE document is a flexible document, acknowledging that there needs to be a reasonable amount of flexibility, and we do believe that it's reasonable here when making a balanced decision as to whether there is harm or not. So hopefully that's explained the situation for you, and don't know if you've got any more questions.
That was very helpful, thank you, and it's given me some reassurance. I think just my final question, really, just to push the point, if we're, from my interpretation of this and what you've just told us, there should be at midday on the 21st of March a significant proportion of the playground that's receiving sunlight. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say, that's absolutely right, and it quickly tracks across, as it were.
Yeah.
So, you know, midday, then through till 2 o'clock, and it's completely gone by almost 4 o'clock. You know, you've got virtually no shadow at that point. But as I say, there will be additional shadow. We can't get around that.
So yeah, I think that's fine as long as there's parts of the playground or a significant part of the playground that's still receiving sunlight. For me, that was the real concern. So I think you've answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just quickly say, if I may, if that's okay, just quickly, this analysis here and why this is so important, the sun hours grant, because what it's looking at really is permanent overshadow. Are we permanently overshadowing that area? What we're showing there on the right is that we're not, okay, and that is really important, I think. Now, I have 3 nephews who are very young, between 2 and 5, and a niece, and in my own personal experience, they're very sensitive to sun, you know, at that age. And so I'm not saying that's an excuse to take away sunlight, but I do know that it's a really important thing that actually too much sunlight in some cases, it's critical to be careful with that with kids.
Thank you.
Anyway, sorry, thank you, I digress.
I'll try to keep it to material planning matters.
Yes, I was getting excited. I do love very much sunlight.
Don't you worry. Other questions for the committee? I might just ask, if you could just turn your mic just for purposes, just to make sure we've dealt with overlooking, okay? And if we can possibly go to slide 17, maybe you could just talk us through what we're seeing here in slide 17, the bottom right hand, the nursery side of it, rooms which are overlooking the play area. Are you able to, who's able to answer that question? Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that came up, and we've engaged with the nursery quite a lot. We went and met with them at the 60-unit scheme when that was knocking around, and then we've engaged with them throughout the the creation of the 48-unit scheme and how to mitigate that. And what that's caused is a change to the internal layouts and how the units are orientated. So what we've got now is a series of secondary windows in that facing flank, which the units aren't reliant upon for a primary outlook. So they're if you're sat in your living kitchen diner, they're not the primary windows that are going to be you're not going to be overlooking from them because they're secondary windows.
Thank you. And just to make sure I've not misinterpreted what I'm viewing here, as opposed to what I've read in the report, I see in grey. What's this in grey I'm looking at? That's a building behind this one, is it?
Yeah, that's because the building stepped, the tallest part is in the front. Yes, yeah, thanks, Tom. The tallest part is in the front part of the site on Commercial Way, and the building height drops as you get back into the towards the nursery side. So we've got equivalent of 5 stories at the back. Then you've got a taller section. Actually, I think it's taller. I think that's just clipped at that stage, or perhaps the resolution hasn't drawn everything through. But the building gets taller as you go towards the front of the site.
Thank you. That's much clearer. Thank you. And another question, if there's no questions from the committee. Do you have a registered provider already in place, I wondered?
We don't have one signed up. We spoke to a number of them throughout the process. So Guildmore, the developer, they're prolific in developing these sort of schemes in the borough. They do it for either get permission, or they're the contractors who build schemes out for RPs. So throughout the design development process, particularly, and that was the benefit of talking to Tom and Tom's colleagues sort of 2 years ago, is that was something that came out of that process, and having an RP on the hook, as it were, and they've been engaged in the process and how that scheme's changed, and it's been designed very much with RPs in mind. So the allocation of the affordable units, the nature of the affordable units, the tenure, the sizes, they all meet the council's and RP's demand, and they've been engaged in all the process. So we know the likely rent levels that RPs will be charging for the different units, and we sort of understand that to keep service costs down, service charges down, the charge is going to be minimised because of the way that the building's laid out. So to answer your question, we haven't got one, but we've got plenty banging at the door. This is a great scheme. It's a great scheme.
I've no doubt it's a great scheme. I'm just very sensitive to service charges for affordable tenants, and it's just really some reassurance that the service charges will not be excessive. There is I know there's a measure by which the service charges are set, but I'm very conscious that those, particularly those who are social renting, are usually on very low income, and we're just very sensitive that your service charges should not exceed the minimum expectation set out in the Mayor's Charter.
Totally agree with you. I mean, the service charges are set by the RPs, but we get a fair idea of what they're likely to charge. I've spoken to a couple of friendly RPs recently, one who's particularly active, who's on the council's preferred nominations list. So they've given us what the target rent levels are, because they're obviously capped, and then the service charge on top of that. So you're looking at maybe sort of 10% on top of that. So say for instance, if you've got a 2-bed, 3-person, that's £131 a week rent, and the service charge is sort of £16, so what's that, 12% on top of that. If you have a look at how that fits with the local housing allowance for a 2-bed, 3-person, is £281. So those are the figures that we're going to be dealing with.
I'm just noting that you've said approximately 10% as a general rule of thumb, and that's useful to know for us in future applications. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
If I can move on, if there is a supporter in the room who lives within 100 metres of the application site. If there's not, if there's a ward councillor in the room. No, there's not a ward councillor. Okay, fair enough. In that case, in committee members, do you want to make any comments on what you've heard so far? Follow-up questions, clarifications? I noticed that Councillor O'Brien has been very quiet this evening, but there you are. Are we content in that case to move to a resolution? Oh, Councillor O'Brien. Okay.
I was a good boy. I asked my questions at the briefing. Can I just get clarification from the officers that we are policy compliant in terms of private amenity space, and basically we're not going to get caught out? I know I asked this question about the rooftop space at the briefing, but in terms of private amenity space and the overlooking, we are policy compliant.
For private amenity space, yes, we're policy compliant in terms of the area. For the child play space in particular, the preference in policy is to provide that at ground floor level or first floor podium level, if not possible at ground floor level. This site isn't able to do that because of the constraints imposed by the provision of the youth club at the ground and first floor levels. So it is provided at sixth floor roof level, which isn't the preference in policy, but in this instance, because of the constraints, is considered acceptable. And in terms of the child play space, the area is the size that is required to be to cover for all age groups on site, which is a positive, because it might be the case that normally with a site like this you might get just the 0 to 11s catered for, and the 12 to 17 would be off-site. But the communal amenity space meets policy requirements in terms of the square metres, and the child play space meets the policy requirements in terms of square metres also.
Thank you. We've not asked a transport-related question. There isn't one? Fair enough. Oh, what a life, huh? What a life. In that case, then, committee, I'll move forward. I move forward to a motion. I'd like to move that we adopt the officer's recommendation set out in paragraph 1 and 2 of the report and page 7 of the main agenda pack. That planning permission be granted subject to conditions set out in the report and addendum report, and the applicant enter into an appropriate legal agreement. In the event that the requirements of paragraph 1 above are not met by the 2nd of September 2022, the Director of Planning and Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for the reasons set out in paragraph 226 of the report. Does any member wish to second? Councillor Williams? In that case, then, what I'll do, I'll proceed to ask you all if you're for, against, abstain, and I'll quote you by name. And I'll begin. So there's always a trick in there somewhere, you see. I'm watching this. Here we go. I'll start with Councillor James Caldwell, for, against, abstain.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Richard Livingstone, for, against, abstain.
For, Chair.
Councillor Damien O'Brien, for, against, abstain.
For, Chair.
And I'm Councillor Martin Seaton, and I'm for... Oh, I've missed you. I told you'd missing. Councillor Bill Williams, for, against, abstain.
Well, as I seconded, I suppose I'm for.
And now Councillor Martin Seaton, I'm for the application. Thank you. Unanimously passed, and thank you all for your presentation tonight in response to committee questions, and we look forward to your future development. Good night to you all. Good night.